Hello and welcome to the DRS Zone podcast. My name is Ed White, and alongside me is my favorite F1 expert. That's partly because he's also my 14-year-old son, Sam Wyatt. Sam, what do you say we wrap up a very interesting Austrian Grand Prix?
Sounds like a good idea. We have a lot to talk about, and the first word that comes to mind, other than Max Verstappen and Red Bull, is track limits.
Yes, I think you're right. In fact, we've named this podcast after track limits. We will get to them in a second. Before we do that, why don't you wrap up the race and then we can delve into that whole track limit scenario?
Yeah, so it's a fifth win in a row for Max Verstappen. Red Bull on fire. They look untouchable. A
Yep.
solid weekend for Leclerc in second, Perez third, followed by Lando Norris and Fernando Alonso in fifth. Carlos Sainz was demoted to sixth with a penalty. George Russell in seventh, Hamilton eighth. Struggle for Mercedes. Ninth, Lance Stroll. And rounding out the points is Pierre Gasly. Out of the points is Albon, Joe, Sargent, Ocon, Bottas. Piastri down in 16th, De Vries, Magnussen, Sonoda, and the only DNF, Nico Hulkenberg.
Yes, so Max 5 in a row now. He's got an 81 point lead in the driver's standing. Still
That's
not
insane.
willing to admit that he's going to win it, even though they try and get him to weigh in on it every week. Red Bull have a 199, almost 200 point lead in the constructor standings. But and great
That's
stuff, obviously.
insane.
Yeah, great stuff again from Red Bull, Max and Perez, as you
Not
mentioned.
even halfway through the
I know.
season.
Yeah, I know. It's ludicrous. Perez comes back and gets on the podium, so his little slump ends. But you're right. The main point was track limits, which for anyone listening who doesn't understand is to prevent drivers from going off at the corner and getting a an advantage. So when you go over that, when all four tires are off the track, you get
Yeah.
penalized. Either in qualifying, it's having a lap deleted, but in the race, it's a warning and then a 5 second penalty, which we saw, I believe, 20 of them handed
Yeah.
out. What do you think? It's kind of, everyone seems to be mixed on it, right? People admitting that the drivers need to find a way to stay on the track, but also it gets pretty absurd when they start handing out penalties right, left, and
I
center.
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, they do need to oblige by the rules and that, but this is ludicrous. You can't have everyone getting penalized, so then it doesn't mean anything because everyone's got the same amount of penalties. So I think they could do that in some corners, but like the last two corners make it the red and white curbs. And I think you need to implement the track limits, but you need to give them a bit of leeway. If everyone's getting a penalty, then it's not the drivers, it's the rules, I think.
Yeah, it's a tricky one too because the Austrian Grand Prix has just been given that long extension. It's obviously Red Bull's home track. Dietrich Mateschitz was so important and has been so important to Formula One. So you can't say, let's get rid of the Austrian Grand Prix or even
No, they
get
just
your
need to
even
change the rules.
yeah, you can't even say get your act together. You kind of have to work in conjunction to figure something out. But
Yeah.
one of the things I noticed, and particularly in qualifying, was it just looks bad. It's just a bad look when drivers
Yeah.
set a record, move into third, and then have it deleted and are down to 13th. And it just keeps happening
Yeah.
over and over again. It just is not a great look for the sport.
No, it's not. For like a newcomer who's like, oh, qualifying, why not watch this? Oh, this guy went on first. Oh, he's now down to 14th. What happened there? Oh, this guy's second. Oh no, he's actually seventh now. It's confusing and it's confusing for us even
Yeah.
because it doesn't really make much sense. So I think they do need to change something. I think they need to have some conversations, the Austrian Grand Prix and the FIA, and just say, hey, this is not working. Obviously, we can't give out this many penalties. Let's find a solution for turn 9 and 10 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, it takes the talking point away from, whether it was Verstappen or Ferrari having a great weekend, which we'll talk about in a bit, but sort of takes that away a little bit because you spend so much time talking about track limits. You throw down to Ted in the pit lane. He's talking about track limits. Interviews afterward with the drivers, they're talking about track limits. Hamilton's on the
Yeah.
radio complaining, saying, this guy's
Perez
Perez
should
is
have got a
going off every.
penalty.
Yeah, exactly. So it just adds to, just makes, in my opinion, it turns into a bit of a whinge fest, right? Right, a weekend of
Yeah.
complaining rather than a weekend
Yeah.
about
From
racing.
fans even as well. I was yelling that Perez should have got the penalty and Sainz got one and complaining, but yeah, they need to change something. And I'm confident that they will change something by next year.
Yeah, I
I
think you're
am.
right. I mean, the tricky one too is, and we won't go on too much longer on this, but people say, we'll just put a wall there, put some gravel there. Doesn't quite work that way. There's safety concerns. There's other races there, MotoGP, things like that.
Yeah.
So you just have to take a lot into consideration. It's a lot. It's not as easy as just saying, "Oh, let's put some grass there or some gravel there." So
Yeah.
your point is a good one. It needs to be looked at and discussed, and need
Yeah,
to make some
definitely.
changes, because other than that,
Definitely.
there were some really good talking points, including
Yeah,
the
it
fact
was a pretty interesting race.
it was. Well, let's
Other
talk about
than
Ferrari. Let's talk
yeah.
about your
Yeah,
team.
I'm happy. I mean, second and sixth. Oh,
Should be fourth.
it should be second and fourth, which I'm very happy with. Second and sixth. Penalties, what are you gonna do? Everyone got one, but second, considering where we've been this season, is feels like a victory. I'm very happy with that. Leclerc drove well. Sainz drove pretty well. There was a bit of I want to go past, play the team game, but that's normal when there's two cars in around the same position
Yep.
fighting for the front. I mean, yeah, I don't have much to complain about Ferrari. This has been our best weekend so far. And the car looked fast. We didn't really make any mistakes pit stop wise, strategy, or driver wise. So, yeah, really happy with the result. Very happy.
There was that slight concern again from Signs about when they double stacked on that pit, that he had
Yeah,
to slow
he
down.
messed up a little bit, but
Yeah, a
that's
little
not in
bit.
the end, that wasn't the difference between
No,
third
and
and
he
fourth.
and he got a
But it
penalty
could have
anyway,
been the
right?
difference between sixth and fifth with the
Mm,
penalty added on. But
yep. It still wouldn't have
it
hit.
was the safety car came out, they came in. He didn't lose like 30 seconds or anything.
No, no.
It
And he
was
wouldn't have
only a
been on the
couple.
podium anyway with that penalty. So,
No, it's a
you,
difference between 2 points,
yeah, that's
and
exactly right.
I'm okay with that. I mean,
Yep.
normally, if it was a bad weekend, mix that in, I would be frustrated, but with a good weekend, throwing that in is fine.
Yep. The other team that did well from an upgrade standpoint was McLaren, which was interesting because
Yes.
Norris got the upgrade early. They were meant to get it at Silverstone. They figured they could get it and only on one car. So Norris, obviously, is the lead driver, got the upgrade. Piastri didn't get the upgrade. He'll get it
You
this
can
coming
really
weekend.
tell the
You
difference.
could really tell for sure. But
16th and 4th.
well, Norris got fourth because of the Sainz penalty, but still he was
Still,
in the
he
top
drove
six.
incredibly
He
well.
did. He
Yeah.
didn't get any penalties either. He was one of the few drivers that didn't get a penalty for track limits. So he
I
drove a
thought he
really,
did
really
during the
clean race.
race.
No, he
No.
didn't. He was one of the few that didn't
It
because
forgive me, it's hard to keep track. There
yeah, I
was
know. Well, they
thousands of
interviewed
them.
him afterward and they were talking about it. And he said, again, he's
Yeah.
kind of mixed. He said, I've got sympathy. On the other hand, the rules are rules. So he was one of
Yeah,
those
I guess.
guys sort of caught in that. But he did really well. And going into Silverstone now, if Piastri also gets that upgrade, then there's an opportunity for McLaren to kind of snap out of that sort of funk
Slump
they've been in. Yeah, or
the
slump
whole
for
year,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, for the whole year. That's exactly right. Um,
You know, yeah. Just gonna butt in there quickly. You said about Norris getting penalties. The top five did not get penalties. Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Norris, Alonso.
yeah, there
So
you go.
that maybe you stay on the track, you get the top five,
Yeah,
even if
well,
you
yeah, that's a really good
even if you're
point.
gonna be slow. I mean, that's really interesting because the ones that stayed on the track were the ones that were fastest. So
Well, there you go. You can see why they would look at it that way. Although
yeah,
Max was not happy with all the penalties, even though he finished first and didn't get a penalty. Um,
that was
but
so cocky of him to pit on the last lap for the fastest lap.
yeah, interesting,
I was
wasn't it?
really hoping that there was like a little mess up in the pit stop or something. That was not a very nice thing to do.
I guess when you're
One
going well,
point
you're
when you're
going
up by
well.
81 points in the championship,
Well, and he
Seriously,
also,
1 point.
who he took it from too,
Who?
Checo.
Yeah.
So
If I were Perez, I would
maybe
not
there
be
was
happy
some of
with
that
that.
there too, a little bit of that going on. But look, when
Yeah.
it's going
He
well, it's going
deserved a
well,
slow
right?
stop there.
When it's going well, it's going well. Speaking of frustration, a little bit. Aston Martin still had a decent result. Obviously, Alonso fifth, Stroll ninth. Alonso boosted up by the Sainz penalty, but they were frustrated. Alonso was
Yeah.
frustrated. His sort of automatic podium that we saw in the first few races seems to be gone at the moment. So, going to be interesting to see what they bring to Silverstone because
Yeah, it will
clearly
be.
Fernando
They're still
Fernando was
fast. Alonso's fast, but
he's still
they
fast
just
and he was
haven't
still
had it the
speedy,
last
but
couple of weeks.
correct. And he's starting to get a little bit of frustration. You could just see it in
Yeah.
the interviews, just a tiny little bit of
Yeah.
frustration and a lot of frustration from Mercedes' standpoint. Hamilton was as unhappy as I've seen him, not giving really good interviews, very quick, very brusque, not that smiley. Everyone back at the factory, thanks for coming out, people. Just didn't see any of that at all. In fact, um,
No.
Toto having to tell him, "We know the car's bad, just drive it." It
Just
was like
drive it.
we could tell it was a
Gosh.
real frustration from Hamilton's standpoint.
It was, yeah. It was.
So they're
But
heading
it,
in
it is understandable. I mean,
absolutely,
it's
but they're heading into Silverstone now, and whether or
it's
not,
frustrating that they're like they have the potential. They can be there. They've got two quick drivers, a pretty quick car, and they just didn't deliver. So
yeah, I know.
it's,
Well, we'll
it is
see.
frustrating.
Hometown race, you
Yeah,
know,
he's done well here in the past.
he had well, he's a what 8-time winner, I think.
Yeah.
When you think about it, he's won 7 of the last 9, and also won it way back in 2008. So 8 times he's won Silverstone. We'll get to that in a little
Gosh.
bit, but those are the interesting ones to look at. See how I think obviously those teams we talked about: Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Mercedes. The first two on the up, the last two sort of on the down. How are they going to recover
Yeah.
at Silverstone? I think those are the real talking points and the things
Hmm.
that we need to look at. Um, drivers under pressure. We talked a little bit about this last week.
Yes,
Sargent
we
finishes
did.
13th.
Very
De,
solid. Very
De,
solid.
De
With a
Vries
penalty as well.
with a penalty. De Vries getting uh, a bit of
Getting the hurry up from
yeah,
Helmet
hurry up. That's
Marko.
the word I was looking for. A bit of a hurry up from Helmet Marko, basically saying, we heard this. We don't know if this is actually going to happen, but 4 races to get things right, or
Oh,
his seat could be in
that's
trouble.
the
That's what was being
that's
reported.
halfway through the season, I think.
Hmm. Doesn't mean
So
he's
who would they
gone.
bring in?
Well,
Ricardo
I don't think it means he's gone now, but it means his seat is up for grabs and is not guaranteed for
next
next year,
year.
right?
Yeah, I
So there's a
guess.
lot of different ways they could go.
I feel like they could change it this year. Like if he doesn't perform the
Hmm.
next 4 races, I think they'll bring Ricardo in this year.
Yeah, I don't know. See, we had that whole Ricardo thing going this week leading in when Perez came out and said he was sick, and everyone here in Australia was going nuts because, hey, that meant Ricardo, who was going to get a drive at Silverstone apparently anyway, as a just a practice drive. Everyone thought it might be him, but they've also got what's his name, Liam Lawson,
Liam
right?
Lawson
Yeah, it's
and
kind of the backup
Sonoda, they've
driver.
also got. I
Yeah,
think they were saying that if Perez couldn't take place, they would have Sonoda would have been the Red Bull driver, and then Ricardo would have gone to the AlphaTauri. So
yep,
I'm not sure. I think Ricardo is also an AlphaTauri backup, and I think there might be a rule about like the lower team you have to take a place of. So
yep. Anyway,
he might have had
look,
to go for AlphaTauri. So
it was
who
good for
knows?
the
But
Australian clickbait industry
it
for a couple
was,
of
yeah.
couple of days,
Daniel
wasn't it?
Ricciardo could find himself racing tomorrow.
Exactly right. Couple other things. Uh, the sprint race actually was pretty
Oh, it
exciting.
was a good race. It
I
was a
must
very good
say,
race.
yep, I must say I enjoyed
Hulkenberg was second for a lot of the time,
it.
and I think it would have counted as a podium if he had got it. I think because now they're calling it a race, not qualifying.
We were talking about that. We were
I
trying to
think it
decide.
would have counted.
Fortunately or unfortunately, we didn't have to answer that question because
No.
he ended up getting passed. But it was exciting early on, and it was a
It
pretty
was,
exciting
yeah.
race.
And the rain came, yeah.
Weather again playing a little bit of a part.
Yeah,
Before we move on to
it was.
Silverstone, there was, of course, there was a touch of sadness over the weekend. obviously we mentioned Dietrich Mateschitz earlier. It was the first
Yeah.
race, first Austrian Grand Prix following his passing, but also the death of the 18-year-old Dutch driver Delano van Hoff that took place at Spa and brought a lot of conversation out about the safety, not only at Spa, but in terms of wet weather driving.
Wet
Because,
weather.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you saw the pictures
The
on
vision.
social media and the vision, yeah, it looked terrible.
Can't see anything. Yeah.
And I think it was,
I think it's a combination of the track and the weather.
I think you're
As
right.
Alonso said, you can't see anything. It's nothing to do with Spa. As he said, if that happens in Monza, it's pretty much the
Yes,
same outcome. So
he did. Although, and I agree with that, but I
I
also,
think Spa has the reputation, so people instantly think, oh, another
true.
Belgian Grand Prix mess up at the
Yeah,
track or something.
no, I
So
agree with that. Naomi Schiff, I thought, made a really good point, and she said the younger drivers are more likely to say, let's drive, let's take the risk because they're trying to make an impression and
yeah,
they're still young and cocky and things like that. So it's even more important for the FIA or the track marshals or whoever's there to say no. We're not going to drive this, right? Whereas the F1
yeah.
guys are way more confident to
Whereas
say,
Alonso or Hamilton would say,
correct,
no, there's no point of it.
and people are going to listen to him, right? The younger
Yeah,
guys are less likely to say that.
yeah,
So that kind of makes sense, but very sad situation. And it did affect a few of the drivers. Lance Stroll spoke out very
yeah. Lance
eloquently
Stroll.
and very strongly about it. Um, British Grand Prix, no rest for the weary, no sleep till
No,
Silverstone.
straight up,
Here we
couple
go.
days. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And it is always a pretty good race around here, and I like it. You got some drama, you got good racing. It's got it all. It has some weather sometimes. Yeah, there's been some good races here, and I'm excited for this week.
Well, Sainz won it last year.
He
Perez was
did,
second.
yeah.
Hamilton third. Verstappen had damage that they initially thought was something to do with a puncture. Turned out to be damage to his floor. Ended up finishing
Floor, yep.
seventh. There were 6 DNFs, including Zhou Guan Yu. Remember that crazy crash where
Yeah, I
fortunately he
do
was
remember that.
okay. Um,
That was insane.
yeah, it sure was.
Yeah,
Um,
Max has never won here.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Red
Red
Bull
Bull
hasn't
haven't won
won
here
since
since 2012.
2012.
Mark
That's right.
Webber.
Mark Webber. So
Yeah,
no Max,
Hamilton
no
has won.
Checo.
Hamilton's won 7 of the last 9. He also won 2008, as you said. So 8 wins on this track. I believe that equals his 8 wins in Hungary and Michael Schumacher's 8 wins in France, I
Yeah,
think,
it's pretty
as the most wins
remarkable
at a
record.
single track. So
Oh, yeah,
if he gets
unreal
the win
record.
here, I think he breaks the record.
I don't think he's going to get the win.
I don't think
Just
he is either.
quietly.
You never know.
But you're right. It is a great race. It's always an important race too because so many of the teams are based, in the
In
UK.
Silverstone,
Yeah,
yeah.
and right around there. So it is going
Yeah.
to be. It's always one for for the teams to really target, and it's one of those that has sort of a more prestigious win. It's kind of like a Monaco in a weird way. It's
It
one of those
sort
Grand
of
Prix you
is,
want to
yeah.
win. Yeah,
And the fans really get behind the British drivers, which I
of
like.
course. Yep,
Big
absolutely.
following, yep.
Which
All
brings
right.
us to predictions. And you did pretty well
Last
last
week,
week, didn't you?
I said Verstappen, Alonso, and Leclerc.
Yep.
So I got 2. And I'm pretty sure I said for my bold prediction that Lando Norris would have a good weekend.
Did you, or are you
I'm
just
pretty
sneaking
sure I
that in
said that.
there?
No, I'm pretty sure I
Okay.
actually said
All
that.
right. We'll go back and
I think
listen
I
to
said
that.
that. So I'll
Um,
take that.
I
Yep.
think I had Hamilton. I know I didn't have Leclerc, but I did sort of,
Yeah, sure,
I liked
sure.
your pick of Leclerc. I think that was a really good pick. Um, Predictions this week. I think
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say Max wins. And why would you go against Max? I'll be honest with you. Max wins for the first time here in Silverstone. I think I think Leclerc or Sainz is going to finish in the top 3, but I don't know if asking for another Leclerc second place makes sense. So I'll say Max, Checo, Leclerc.
Oh, it's exactly what I was gonna say. All
Was
right.
it? That's all right.
I'll
We can go
shake
with
it up.
that.
I say it's a pretty dramatic race, but it's still Max,
Yep.
Norris,
Okay, I like it.
and George Russell.
Wow,
Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
I like Norris as a potential podium top six finish. I like that a lot. Um, whether
Max, Norris, Russell.
yeah, okay, interesting.
I think
So
it's an interesting race, but Max still wins it.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's the year that you just kind of have to look at it and say you
No
can't
one
go,
else is gonna win
you
a
can't
race.
predict against them. Yeah, exactly. At this point, you can't do it. It just doesn't make sense.
The
Um,
only way he's not gonna win a race is if he doesn't take part in a race. Pretty much.
because the car seems
It's yeah.
absolutely
And he's driving
bulletproof.
incredibly as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly right.
and
Um,
everything's going his way. Pit stop, strategy, luck, rain, weather,
and that's what
red flags, yellow flags,
you have
virtual
to
safety
take your hat off
cars.
to Red Bull, don't you? Because they get the,
And
like
yeah.
you were mentioning that thing about him going for that fastest lap.
And
Is
they
it a
nailed that.
risk?
If that was
They nailed
Ferrari,
it.
we would have messed that up.
They nailed it.
That shows you the trust for the team that every other team is missing.
Yep. You're absolutely
No one
right.
else would feel comfortable to go, are you sure we're gonna make it? 1 second, we'll be fine. Trust the team.
You're
No one
absolutely
else,
right.
especially Ferrari, would do that.
No, that's true.
So
Final
it's
notes, a
pretty
couple of
impressive.
notes. Our good buddy Hugh Barter, who is
Yeah. First points.
managed by a friend of ours. First points in F3. Really exciting. Really
Yeah,
exciting for him. He got
really,
a bit
really
lucky
good
on a
work.
couple of things, but
But you
doesn't matter.
make your own luck in this sport, don't
Points are
you?
points, right? Points are
Yeah.
points. And the other thing we should mention is that remarkable scenes on Monday is Shane Van Gisbergen from the
Oh,
three-time Supercars winner wins the Chicago street circuit in
on
NASCAR and
his debut
debut.
race in NASCAR,
Unbelievable.
he
He's an incredible
wins.
driver and obviously has an advantage over some of those guys driving a road course, but still to
Still, his
jump in
first
the car,
race.
absolutely.
You,
And
yeah,
wheels on the other side of the car and the pedals and
that's
shifting and
insane.
all that
It is
stuff.
a similar car, but still,
It is remarkable. It was
I
just
think
remarkable to see him do
it's
it. And
really impressive.
I loved the sort of respect that all those NASCAR guys gave him. They kind of laughingly said, I don't know his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. Who is this guy? But they all just said, he's incredibly fast. This guy's a great
Yeah,
driver. There was a lot of respect for him, which I thought was great. For a guy from little old New Zealand via Australia, it's really good to see.
yeah, it is
Um,
good. I'm happy for him.
Anything else before we go? I think that probably just wraps it up. If I'm
Yeah,
not,
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah,
I'm happy not to hear track limits for the next few months, to be honest, but I'm sure we'll hear them at some point.
I'm sure we'll hear him. There'll be a track that they'll come back.
I know it'll be back. I
I can assure you.
go to sleep having nightmares about them saying, "Oh no, his lap's been deleted. He's been given a penalty. Track
That thing that
limits."
Ted did on the notebook was really funny.
That was great, where he restarted his thing, was saying he stepped over the line. Very, very funny.
Yeah, very funny.
All right, this
Yeah.
has been the DRS Zone podcast. My name is Ed Wyatt. His name is Sam Wyatt, and you can find this anywhere you get your podcasts. We will see you after the British Grand Prix.